just to kind of set the tone, so we scope assignments through globally recognized best practices. We published our methodology in Stanford Social Innovation Review about how to make sure that skilled volunteers land with impact. So what I am going to do here today is give you an overview first of the process from the MovingWorlds side. What does MovingWorlds look for when we're reviewing projects that have been submitted? And in the second half, we'll kind of flip the perspective and look at it from what will you see in the actual project submission page as an organization representative when you go to add your first project. So we'll go ahead and get started. So I bucketed the categories of sort of what does MovingWorlds look for, these elements of a good project, and it breaks down into skills, capacity building, working period, scope, and deliverables. Also, I know I'll be throwing a lot of information at you. We will definitely send you this slide deck afterwards, and you're welcome to email me. So if I'm moving too fast or if you have questions, also feel free to put them in the chat. But let's just go through these one by one. So the first element that we look for is clearly defined skills. So what does that mean? Your project description should clearly indicate which skills are required to successfully complete the project. An experteer reading it should be able to tell. So let's look at two examples. Here's the first one. We're building our first digital academy for women in our community. The skills development and capacity building will create new paths to employment and financial independence. You can tell here that this tells us about what the organization does, but it doesn't tell us anything about how an experteer could support or what skills they would need to have. So a better option would be something like, we're seeking a fundraising experteer to help us develop a strategy for raising required capital to launch the first digital academy for women in our community. So that's the first item. The second is an element of capacity building. So is there some form of skills transfer that's happening here? Instead of just coming in, doing a project, potentially creating a cycle of dependency, needing another volunteer, the goal is really to build long-term capacity, so impact can be measured not just after the project, but a year later. So again, two examples. First one, we're looking for an experteer to write grant proposals for us. You can tell it's missing that element of skills transfer. A better alternative would be to say something like, we're looking for an experteer to train our team on grant writing best practices. Now, the third bucket of criteria is a defined working period. So what we mean by that is that it's not indefinitely ongoing and it's not a full-time job description. So the project has a clear start and end. So let's look at an example first that doesn't fit this criteria. So that example says, we're looking for an experteer to manage our grant writing and fundraising process, monitor the status of applications, and report on KPIs quarterly. So this is more of a, as I mentioned, ongoing full-time job description versus a single defined project. So a better alternative would be, we're looking for an experteer to work with us over 3 months to build the internal processes required to track our ongoing fundraising efforts and grant applications. So you can kind of see the difference there. The fourth thing is appropriate scope. So what we mean by this is that it's a single project rather than multiple projects. So an example that doesn't quite fit this criteria would be, we're looking for an experteer to update our website, refine our marketing materials, complete a financial analysis, and identify potential investors. So we get projects like this sometimes where, because especially early stage, there's lots of different needs, right? But this would definitely be multiple projects. You could divide this really into one project for a web design expert, one for marketing expert, one for finance, and one for fundraising. And it also helps expedite the match. You're so much more likely to find an experteer with a single set of skills or with related skills than this whole broad, a marketing expert that also does finance. So a better alternative would be, in terms of scope, something like, we're looking for an experteer to analyze and help us refine our marketing materials and the text copy on our website. So that's a marketing professional can successfully complete that. And then the fifth, possibly the most important, would be just having clear deliverables. So this is a clear and specific description of the work to be delivered by the experteer at the end of the project. So instead of saying something like, by the end of this project, we want to raise $100,000. It's more of an outcome than a deliverable. There's so many steps between not having raised any and having raised 100,000 that it doesn't clearly indicate like what pieces of that the experteer would be responsible for. So a better alternative could be, we're looking for an experteer to help us build the internal processes needed to track fundraising efforts, build a pipeline of potential donors, and train the team on grant writing best practices. Those are kind of the 5 things that we look at on our side when we're reviewing a project, but I wanted to kind of flip the perspective to show you what it'll look like when you log in from your dashboard to submit your first project and how these things translate. So the first thing that you'll be prompted to do is to add a title. As far as kind of our naming conventions, something simple that just includes the type of skills and kind of the impact or the cause. So in this example, I put digital marketing expert for clean water solution in Indonesia. After you enter your project title, you'll be asked about your location preference. So on-site only means they will be coming to your location, working with you in country. Virtual support, just happening through technology or a combination. We sometimes have people do these hybrid projects where perhaps they can only be on the ground for 1 week. They do part of it virtually beforehand, spend that time on the ground doing things that require face-to-face interaction, like user interviews or something, and then complete it virtually. Obviously, because of COVID, the vast majority are virtual, but I just wanted to add some context around what these options mean. So the next thing you'll be asked is to enter your project description and impact. And so my best guidance here is just to tell us a bit about what you do, what your organization does, and then how this project ties into it. So using that same clean water solution example, you can see the first paragraph is about what is this organization, what is their impact, what do they do? So organization produces most affordable household water filters, which empowers women with free flow of safe drinking water. So that's, you know, kind of background on who this organization is. And then the second paragraph goes into more how this specific project is part of that. So they're saying, you know, we rely on online sales. We want to increase our impact by boosting sales for this channel. And that's why we're looking for someone to improve how we, our digital marketing strategy, essentially. After you enter the project description and impact, then you'll be asked to enter deliverables. So this is where a lot of kind of those 5 things I mentioned before will tie back in. Again, it's just what the experteer specifically will be responsible for doing by the end of the project, how you'll know it's been a success. So in this example, and bullet points are fine, encouraged. This example says, you know, we're looking for an experteer to analyze our current social media strategy, provide recommendations on how we can improve, support us in developing a forward-looking digital advertising strategy, and then training our team on how to implement it. So you can see the elements of specificity as well as the skills transfer capacity building component. And then on the next page, you'll be able to add the skills. So you can select up to 5. If you just start typing, it'll bring down the whole menu, or you can type for specific ones. Again, going back to that, the scope criteria, try to, you know, if you're selecting multiple skills, ideally they're connected. It wouldn't be, you know, finance and marketing. It'd be marketing, copywriting, PR, for example. And then you'll also have space for additional requirements. So this is anything, any other qualities of your ideal candidate. So, you know, for example, has experience designing and executing digital marketing campaigns, has some knowledge of SEO, comfortable working with autonomy. And then one of the kind of last pages you'll get to is benefits. So what can a professional gain by working with you on your project? And, you know, I think sometimes people hear the word benefits and think, you know, we don't have the resources to be allocating to, you know, additional benefits for this pro bono support. And that's not what it's about, especially with a virtual project. So I would just consider framing it similar to this. So what benefits can you provide? For example, connections with a global team who will be happy to write a letter of recommendation or serve as a professional reference. And then what can a professional learn by experteering with you? I think for every organization on this call, just getting hands-on experience with the scaling social enterprise is incredibly valuable from the experteer's perspective, and something unique that you can offer without, you know, allocating additional resources in terms of finance or anything like that. So, so yeah, that's